Hi, Peter Allen, Figure Transformations, and today we're going to do a shoulder and leg workout. Now, if you're doing this at home, you might not have like an Olympic bar or a barbell. So first exercise we're going to do is a deadlift. You could do like a suitcase pickup, which is pretty much the equivalent of it. So sometimes it's easier if you have, two risers. So that's why I set these up here. So your deadlift would come all the way down and up. Okay. Again, you can go all the way down to the floor as well. Just remember, the lower you get, the harder the range of motion becomes. Same thing with a deadlift. So I'll use like 45s, or I'll use these risers as well if I'm only running 25 with a climb or something like that. So the other thing we're going to do is cleans, upright rows, and shrugs. And if you have a barbell, great. I'll show you how to do them with the dumbbells if you're doing it that way. So we're going to do 3 exercises of each. So we're going to do deadlifts, Romanians, and calf raises for the 3 for the legs. And we're going to do 3 for the shoulders. We're going to do upright rows, shoulder shrug, and clean presses. Not that quite over. So if you watch the kind of tutorial on the deadlift, we want to make sure we're here. Okay, if you need to use a reverse hand grip to better hold the weight, or if you're lifting a heavy weight, that's the way you're going to do it. Just kind of going with moderate weight today. So I'm going to use my open hand or hands on the same side to increase forearm and wrist strength as well. Same thing too when kind of grabbing. This one you are going to kind of wrap your thumbs around. Okay. Side shoulder width. I'll show you another view too. Core tight, driving the legs. So, show you this angle. Anywhere from 6 to 12 is a good rep range, okay, in terms of weight. Ideally, you start off with a higher rep range, lower weight, and then kind of work your way down. Okay, shoulder width apart, and come straight down, core tight. Now before you lift too, deep breath in, so make sure that you're, keeping that spine stable. So take a deep breath in. You can either let out on the way down, or let out at the down, and then kind of reset your breathing, if you will. I tend to hold mine through the whole movement pattern, just again to kind of stabilize the spine, because it's not a really long movement pattern. One of the important things here too is a lot of people try and jerk the bar. If you try and pick the bar up with your arms, it becomes very hard and heavy. So we're trying to transfer all that weight and energy into our hips. So our arms are just kind of there, okay? Now we walk and stabilize our back, but from there, it's just all legs, okay? Core tight. We kind of talked about in other videos, hand placement is huge and important. It changes and alters an exercise kind of completely. So I'm going to do an upright row with a barbell. I'm going to show you how to do it with a dumbbell too, in case you don't have a barbell at home. So, you can either with the barbell go wider or narrow. I want to kind of let my shoulders round up, if you will. Core tight, core pulled in. And I'm going to pull up and into my chin. I'm keeping that weight out in front of me. A lot of times with barbell, I think the form's easier to get, especially kind of taking a narrower grip. Because you want to make sure you leave those elbows up. A lot of people flatline. That's different if we're going into a clean, which is more timing and explosiveness. So if we got the dumbbells, we're coming up. Again, I'm trying to maintain my wrists nice and straight as best I can. So as they're coming up, coming to these angles, you don't want to curl, you don't want to flop. It's one of the big things I encounter a lot when seeing people exercise. We got to understand that wrist starts changing and moving into a motion that we don't want. It changes and alters that exercise completely. Now, the other thing I would be careful with too is kind of on the reps. I'm going to stay lower today, just because again, it does, all these are going to work the lower back. So, deadlifts in particular, upright rows, cleans, and any of those. So suitcase pickup here, coming straight down. You want those weights to hit. The whole point of the deadlift is to get that dead weight. All too often, I see a lot of people trying not to put the weight all the way down. You want that pause at the bottom to make sure, again, we're starting from zero. So a lot of people when they exercise, we tend to use momentum when we're exercising, not realizing what that does. While that's important for explosiveness, it's not always important for equal muscle development, because when we're bouncing, we're skipping over a movement pattern. So again, different if you're doing it intentionally. If you're doing it unintentionally, then you want to be careful, because there's a reason that you're unintentionally doing that. A lot of times, it's a masked, weak, or a tight muscle. I don't really like calling muscles weak too much anymore. It's more that they're just tight. So I can feel my left shoulder a little sticky. It's been a while since I did these particular movements in exercise, because again, I didn't watch some of the other videos exploring the percussion therapy, because I wanted to fix my right hip before I started this, because I realized it was just getting further and further away, and I couldn't understand it, and everything out there told me strengthen, 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 and I realized certain muscles just became overpowerful. And again, if certain ones come overpowerful, it's really hard to take that away, because it's a scar tissue is developed, especially when we're old. Maybe different when we're in our younger age, but even then, like most of my issues started when I was in my 20s, and I just kind of masked them. Staying low, just as I did deadlifts yesterday too. But again, I'm realizing the importance of some of these movement patterns. I'm trying to break up the tissue in my right glute. And squats are a great way to break that up. Or deadlifts, I should say. Because you'll notice we won't get into any weighted squats until I am happy or comfortable with my hips. Because years ago, that's how I originally injured it. I was squatting with somebody who's much shorter than I, and I didn't take the weight off of it. And I tweaked my low back. That's what sent my hips off. I hadn't realized at the time my left glute was really tight. I understand it now. But. All right, Romanians. So we're doing with a barbell. I'm not going to adjust the weights on that now. I'm just going to do mine with dumbbells. So core tight, the hinge. Now I used to teach this with all the weight in the heels. And I realized the following in that. I want my weight, my balls of my feet a little bit, pull my heels down, core tight, hinge over, about mid-shin level. If you can get all the way down, great. Just careful of that lower back. So I notice maybe right about there, I might start rounding. But I'm not going to go all the way down. Now, if I was using bigger dumbbells or weights, barbell, I would go all the way down by 25s. So same thing with dumbbells. I tend to like to start from the side because it brings me to a neutral position. Just like if I was picking something up, basically I'd hinge over and then pick it, and I bring it to my side. It's not going to leave it in front of me. So again, personal preference. Still got my balls, my feet on the ground, pushing my hips into the floor. Now I used to cue this in all these exercises. That's why you'll notice not doing a ton of cues on the muscles, because the muscles should just be firing. If we have good form and good technique, the muscles should be doing their work. And I realize and understand this now. Where before I used to squeeze the glutes, which is really tensing the glutes, and then you're running the movement. Well, the glute's not able to shorten and contract because it's just staying contracted. So we gotta understand that if I'm just tensing my bicep and moving, my bicep's not really doing the work because it's just tense. It's hard. Now the secondary's gotta kick in. Same thing with the glutes. So we gotta take those things into consideration when we're doing that. Cleans. So if we're running dumbbells, two different ways we could do this. So I can come up and up, or I can go bicep drive. Okay. That second one, this one is the easiest way to do it. It's not quite a clean at that point. Really hard to do a clean with dumbbells, but with a barbell, it's that upright row. Get underneath it, kind of called the cradle. And from here I push up and back. Come down to the cradle, kick my elbows out and down. Really extremely hard exercise for a lot of people, but I realize its importance now because it's getting us through all these ranges of motion. Now you could even run this all the way down, coming up, or you can run it on the deadlift too. But I'm understanding again some of these kind of Olympic moves, as you will. That's hitting your, especially if you're going all the way down. You're hitting your hamstrings and glutes. Lower back, upright traps, lats, shoulders, front delt, rear delt, pec, bicep, you kind of name it, it's hitting it. So it's a, really great full body movement pattern. All right, Romanians, I want the dumbbells because these guys are a little bit heavier. All right, so balls of the feet, driving through the hips. If you drive through the hips into your feet, the right muscles will fire if everything is working appropriately. All too often we're trying to get clients to focus on certain muscles, let's say the hamstrings, or whatever. I did it more because I wanted to know what they were feeling, so I could understand if something was going wrong. But now, I understand just by looking at their mechanics, I know exactly what they're doing. And if it's in the right. It's all about the timing, it's all about the hand placement. If those two things aren't the way they should be, then it's going to lead to secondary muscles. And this is all too often what happens with a lot of people. Is either A, we become too tight and scar tissue develops, and we end up into our secondaries, or B, which again, we have too much scar tissue, you can't complete the movement properly, and we're forcing our secondaries to work. That doesn't seem idea, but regardless, what it all comes down to is scar tissue or flexibility, and how do we fix it? Now, if you're young, you may be able to, through exercise alone, fix it. You gotta understand, for a lot of our years, we end up with a sedentary life. Even if we're in school, we're playing the sports, you know, when we're sitting around, our little torques, hip popping, knee locking, these things add up. They change everything. They change the dynamics of the way that we move, the way that we sit, the way that we stand. That's where the scar tissue develops, because we're not all too often working full range of motion. I was even thinking about it the other day, like a lot of sports. So, you know, football, you're getting down into a squat. But a lot of other sports, you never get into that. Don't get into it in basketball. I might drop a little bit. Baseball, you might be in this kind of shortstop position, but again, you're not always working these ranges of motion, and it has, you know, consequences. I realize. You know, swimming might be one of the very few things in gymnastics that elicit these big movements. Cycling too, but again, all too often what happens when I meet or see clients is their lack of range of motion through exercise. And just like everybody else, for years, I thought it was just that I need to get them stronger. I need to get them stronger, I need to get them stronger. And I tried every way, different exercises, various movement patterns. Yeah, they got stronger within their range of motion, but it was really hard to increase someone's range of motion in an exercise. Again, the younger they are, the easier it is, but the older they are, the harder it is. Now, while you can always get and see results, regardless of your age, a lot of times what would happen is sooner or later, something gets injured. Usually never in the gym or exercising. It's, you know, walking the dog. We're just kind of random things that tie in your shoelaces and throw you back out. It's because we're not as aware of what we're doing when we're outside of the gym. A lot of times we're much more careful, for the most part, inside the gym, and aware of what we're doing. We're in our bodies, but a lot of times we're not. So we're going to go calf raise. So, could use weights here too. I'm going to use weights today, but core tight, coming up to the balls of my feet, pulling my heel. Okay, so pulling my heel to my toes. I realized the folly of a lot of people that, and I used to do it, was try and pull the toes to the heel. Now it's a scrunching motion, which is very commonly used. Now we do lose that mobility, but if I pull my heel towards my toes, I get much better gastroc activation. The arch of my foot stays active, and I stay more stable. Now again, it takes time to develop that. Like my right foot is really not where I would like it to be because of years of spraining it. And I understand if you watch some of the other videos, it all comes from my hip. My hip was really messed up, honestly. My quad was becoming overdeveloped. I could disguise it, I can move it, I'm flexible for, you know, my size. And I always strength trained, always exercised, but I knew it was getting worse. And that's why I, you know, developed this kind of percussion therapy, because I figured, you know, if our bodies get out of alignment, there's got to be a way to put it back. And, you know, all too often, we wait till we get an injury before we fix it. Again, we a lot of times think, you know, exercising is going to keep that away. when I know all too well that I got a lot of clients that if by any means exercise would have fixed them, they would have been fixed by now. They cycle, they run, they swim, but their movement patterns were all tight and tense, and it's so hard to get somebody, you know, 50s, 60s, 70s, when they're that active, and then start having issues. Never mind having a knee surgery or knee replacement, ankles, you know, all that. Scar tissue builds up every time you exercise, every time you injure something. Shrugs. So I'm going to do mine with a heavy bar, but shrugs could be done with the dumbbells. I guess I'll just do the dumbbells. So again, when I'm holding the weights, I want them parallel to the ground. My head stays in neutral position. Now, for years, I had taken these out of the regimen for a lot of my clients, myself included, because I was thinking, well, everybody's traps are tight. This is a mistake that I ran into in a lot of things is, okay, well, they're tight, so they're being worked. But really what they're being is tense. So they're tensing those muscles. They're not actually moving them to range of motion. And that's how we keep our fascia healthy, is by continually moving these various muscles or ranges of motion. And all too often, myself included, because I didn't understand every movement that was necessary for the body to be done, as well as what to do when someone, cherry one is, becomes really tight. How do we effectively change somebody's range of motion that struggles with, you know, let's say squatting, and they're hinging forward. Now, if you take an athlete, somebody who exercises a lot, very easy, okay, to do all this stuff. But I'm talking about people that deconditioned or, you know, got into exercise later in life, and they just don't have full range of motion. You know, you take, you know, somebody who's performing at college level, or, you know, an athlete, totally different ballgame. You're dealing with kind of your average person, or even your above average person. I know a lot of people who exercise a lot that, again, don't realize that they're not getting the range of motion. And I was a big proponent for years of, and still am, something's better than nothing. But you gotta understand too, so sometimes when maybe that thing that you enjoy doing is not maybe the best for you, or that you could improve it, especially with the percussion therapy. I mean, honestly, those things, you know, I know most people have one nowadays. And these things have been out since 2008. I can't believe nobody else has figured out, you know, what I have in ways to facilitate lasting change for the fascia movement. I mean, you'll see it as these next few months are going to be huge for me. I know it, I can already feel it. I got everything moving. I can already tell my hips are better. You know, what I'm working on is getting, you know, my knees back in alignment. Because all too often they end up twisted and rotated. If you notice some of my other videos that I show, what happened to mine, my right's worse than my left. So I believe I'll fix my left before my right, but I have been spending more time on that right side. Now again, weight doesn't, a lot of times in my opinion, matter. The form matters. All too often, a lot of people want to go heavier than what they should be lifting. You know, people have their own ideologies about that. I've been studying this stuff for the last 20 years to understand it. Because I knew something was off with all the information out there. I didn't have all the information. Because, I mean, think about it. If exercise would solve everything, we would have one master plan kind of to fix everything. And somebody wouldn't go to a PT or a chiropractor and not get fixed. If that was lasting and it would completely change everything. I'm not saying that isn't helpful by any means. But there is no booklet, you know, and that's really what I've kind of figured out is, okay, well, how do we address everybody systematically? Because for the most part, we all do the same things. You know, we vary a little bit here and there, but we all get up, we sit at the table, get in the car, drive to work, maybe you sit down, maybe you stand up. We're all doing similar things, okay? So you got to understand, for the most part, it all has to happen the same way. And that's, again, what I've, you know, figured out and understood. You can watch some of the other videos about that. So hopefully you found this helpful and informative. If you have questions on form, technique, anything, feel free to ask me. I'm more than happy to make a video, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Thank you.